So we'll have to move pretty quickly. But anyway, so what we're going to do is just get started here. But Erica and I are urban planners. But work solely for towns, counties, water districts. What I'm going to do is start out with the part, part here. If you're resident, if you're affiliated, well, sure, sure. We're people just we're going that. And we're going to sort of it lasts only. Well, we
professional career working out here. Initially helping consulting and now.
Say a few words.
I'm Carla, I'm with the city.
Say a few words too, though. Right. How about you ladies?
Hi, I'm Mary Goldsmith. I've lived here permanently for about 37 years. In my current house for about 35 years. I'm an attorney, photographer, writer. I served on the city council for 6 years and was on the planning and zoning and chairman of the planning and zoning commission back in the 1990s. And, I'm a concerned citizen.
I'm Joellen Kruger, I'm on city council, I've been here like 43 years. And manage a marina and condos.
And concerned citizens.
Yeah, and a concerned citizen.
Finally. Well, thank you all for that brief introduction and get to know each other. And I'm sure we'll get to know each other as we go along. So what we wanted to do is do a brief slideshow here. And this is what we were going to talk about this afternoon is what we expect of you all as CPAC members and go over abbreviated scope of what we're doing and the schedule and get oriented towards that. And then we have some data that we've already collected that Erica is going to present to you in terms of some of the demographics. And then lastly, what we wanted to do is with the committee is just spend a little time trying to identify the issues. Now, issues can be good things or not so good things. They don't have to be anything wrong. It can be we want to preserve something that's good. But what are the issues that you think that we need to address here in Port Aransas? So we'll do that last. And then I'll touch about it at the very end. We have an open house tomorrow night that we're going to try to get a broader input from citizens in general, anybody that would be interested in coming. And then we're going to come back to you on Thursday night with some results and ideas. We're trying to say, okay, this is what we heard. What do you all think about it? So that's what we're going to do. So let's roll here. Why, certainly. You see now? Okay. All right. So what we really ask of the members that have been selected is, in a way, to be ambassadors of the process here. We don't ask you to agree with every single thing that's said, but we'd like you to speak positively about the process as we go through. So it's a good process. Everybody has a chance to provide input and really promote the process as being very worthy and a very good process to follow for establishing our goals and visions. And that's really important. We'll have plenty of time to debate the issues and take different sides on things if necessary, but it's important to give the process a chance to work. And that's what we would like to do. We want you to tell us what your perspectives are. This is not like we can go ask every single person what their perspectives are, but we have felt like the council has appointed you as a cross section. And so we are very interested in what your perspectives are. And as we make recommendations, we want you to be able to react to them and interact with the recommendations that come forward for them or not. And then review the material. You're going to get material and review those, critique it, and then we're going to go back and forth. And that way, the plan is not consultant's plan, it's your plan. And as I mentioned, spread the word about the process, talk to your neighbors, your business associates, and we're trying to do this in a way that we have set it up to get a lot of input And we're gonna try to work very hard at that, but we need your help to sort of spread the word and make sure others can provide input. There's gonna be social media mechanisms that can be used to provide all kinds of comments, and we're gonna assimilate all that. All right, so this is the general scope of the work that's to be done. But just to start out with, this plan is our vision. And Yogi Berra, a famous baseball player, had a saying that if you don't know where you're going, you're not likely going to get there. And so what we want to do is have a vision of where we want to go. Where do we want our community to go and be? And so that's very, very important. And firstly, it's going to be a decision-making guide for the P&Z and the city council. It's going to help them make decisions about land use matters and other related decisions. Guide for future land uses. It's going to be a basis for policy. It's a policy document, basis for zoning, basis for capital improvement planning. It is not the zoning ordinance, and so we're not redoing the zoning ordinance, although I'll have a slide here in a minute that it does inform that, or it's not a rigid policy and it's not the final answer. We're still going to have the problems of national politics. We're still going to have problems of state politics. But I tell cities that this is something that's here. It's not in Austin. It's not in Washington, D.C. It's here. We have control of our destiny when it comes to these types of matters. So it's important. It's one of the, I don't say a few things, it's one of the things that cities can still do for themselves. And that's why it's important. The way this informs, we always like to say that Zig Ziglar, you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. So the comprehensive plan really is the guiding document. And then whatever we decide to do, and whatever we decide that Port Aransas needs to be, that vision and those goals inform zoning and subdivision. Zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance are implementation tools. It implements what we want to do in the plan. So that's why it's important to remember what we're doing is setting policy. And then that policy will be used to guide changes in zoning. We've already been working on things, short-term rentals among many others. So this is designed to help that. So here's the basic scope. We're going to run through this quickly. Is that first of all, we're going to have what we call a community snapshot. We're going to have data. In other words, what we need to do is have some facts about the community. It will help all of us begin to understand what kind of a baseline analysis of where we are.
She'll make the presentation available. I know some of you guys are snapping pictures. She'll make this whole presentation available.
No, we'll put it up on the website tonight.
Also, we're gonna deal with land use. Housing is an important issue here, and community character. There's other things nested within this. For example, I've always thought that there ought to be maybe a center, a place to be called center of Port Aransas. And maybe you want to think about what is Old Town, or what is downtown, or what is city center. We can call it whatever we want, but that would be something that we would like to explore with you all and see if you all think that's something that we would put into the plan. And then we're also going to look at different things in terms of transportation, facilities. David talked to the Attorney General about fire and police and those needs. We're going to try to address those, and as well as other infrastructure. And then finally, the most important thing out of all this is an action plan. What are we going to do, and who's going to do it? It's going to be a workbook for the city manager, city council, planning and zoning commission to do things. So what are we going to do, and who's going to do it? And so that's real important. That'll be the result of it. this is the schedule. We were planning to meet at 3:30 in the afternoon. Hope that works for everybody. We're kind of wedged in with council and P and Z meetings, and so this was a time. So unless we're told otherwise, that's what we'll try to do. These are the dates so far. We're hoping that we can have a recommendation from you all by December. We won't be done by then because we still have to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission in total, City Council, and get it adopted, have a public hearing required by law. We'll have open houses, but we have to do some things to get it adopted. But we're hopeful that we can make a recommendation. We'll set our goal. We want to try to get it done before Christmas with you all. So that's what we're shooting for that. So you can see it's a little over a year process. And this is generally the path and the dates. We'll give you these, and so you can get them on your calendar. This is the first meetings. We just picked the dates that work that we could squeeze in for us. But if you all have another thought, please tell us when you'd like to meet. We'll meet whenever y'all want to meet. We were just trying to fit in the schedule. We have limited space, and we're just trying to get a slot in there where we can have the space. Okay, so we'll get those so you can get those on your personal calendars. We're going to run through these next pretty quick here because I want to save the most time for this last exercise. But these arrows over here on the left show where we are in terms of the whole process. Tomorrow night, we're going to have an open house. It's at 6 o'clock. I think it's a theater, isn't it? And so we're going to have folks come in. We're going to have some boards, and we're going to try to get some issues identified from the public. So that'll be tomorrow night. And then we're back here Thursday night. What we hope to do is spend, that'll be Wednesday night. We're going to try to spend the following day and a half assimilating all the things we've heard Wednesday night, and then come back to you Thursday night and have a few ideas. Say, well, this is what we've heard, and these are some of the ideas we heard at the open house, and here's some of the things that we've kind of put with it that we've heard from just around. What do you all think? And that'll help us get a jump on establishing some goals and objectives to begin to guide the process. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish with the meetings tomorrow night, and then back to you all on Thursday night.
The Thursday night meeting will be at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, we got lucky and got the space.
It'll be here.
But these other dates have been set here, as you can see, as we get closer to the December, those dates are not totally set. But if you have a thought about other meeting times, get with Rick. He'll help us set up place and time for those. Let's go ahead and go to the next review here and start this. This was the plan that was done in 06. It was really just a map. It really wasn't, it didn't include, those of you that were here might remember, it didn't really include a robust public input process like we're going through this time. But nevertheless, it was an effort to try to get a handle on land use. Then following that was a transportation plan that was adopted, and we're going to be revising it as well. And then you did a bike ped plan, bike pedestrian plan, and so that was completed. In 2011, you did a parks plan, and then concurrently with this, simultaneously with this, we're doing another park plan, different effort, but you'll see that overlap. And so there'll be some information on that. We hope to be able to fold that into our planning process too. Erica, why don't you just make a few comments about some of the population trends just to get us oriented for our exercise.
Great, so the information that you see here is in the community snapshot chapter, and that's what I emailed out. We also have some hard copies of that document. That too, so don't feel like you need to rush to take down any notes or anything. But you see the city's population trends here over time. It's increasing, which I'm sure you all know. Looking at the last about 10 years or so, how the rate of growth here compares to the surrounding region and the state of Texas as a whole. Compared to the coastal bend region, growth has been a little bit faster here, but compared to the state, it's been just a little bit lower. But our current population is almost about 4,000 people. But as you all living here, you know that that doesn't tell the whole story about the population that Port Aransas sees. So we're looking into what are some of the impacts of tourism. There's sort of the double-edged sword of positive and negatives that come along with it. But the estimated overnight visitors is 12,000 people or even more. We're looking into refining these numbers a little bit, but what we found initially is at least 12,000 overnight visitors and up to 60,000 or sometimes even 80,000 visitors per day during the peak season. Some of the benefits from that, there's an estimated 3,400 jobs that are generated here in the area based on the tourism that's coming in, and also a financial impact of $7.7 million. And this is, we looked at 2019 data because that was before the pandemic and also a little bit of time after Hurricane Harvey for recovery. So that's why we're looking at 2019. But like I mentioned, there are a lot of challenges that you guys are intimately aware of. The traffic that comes along with the tourism, noise, litter, housing availability, and affordability are also major challenges that come along with the tourism. Next, looking at the demographics to see who is here today. On the left side, you can see an age pyramid, and the colored lines are who is here in Port Aransas, and the black sort of hollow line around it is compared to Texas. So you can see what you might see in an average community versus what you see here. And as shown here, you can see that the rows are a little wider here for the age groups starting at about 50 up to about 80. So the population here skews a little bit older compared to the state, the median age here being about 53 compared to 35 statewide. So that's a little bit different compared to the state. Then also the diversity breakdown, the pie chart here is looking at racial distribution. So the inside of the pie chart is Port Aransas, the outside of the pie chart is Texas for comparison. So if you look at the teal color here, that's the percentage that is white alone. So you see that there's not quite as much diversity here in Port Aransas compared to the state, but whenever you look at that over time, it is becoming more diverse over time and starting to approach more of the Texas distribution. Also something similar for the Hispanic population. Hispanic is considered an ethnicity, not a race, so it's broken out separately, but that's about 11% here compared to 40% statewide. Next, looking at housing costs, the dark purple line, that is Port Aransas, the light gray line, that is Texas. And you see a big jump for Port Aransas in the 300 to 400,000 range. So a lot of homes there, and the box over on the right side is talking about the percentage of households that are cost burdened. And when we say cost burden, that is, HUD actually has a definition for it that is, if a household is spending more than 30% of their household income on their housing costs, they're considered cost burden. So keeping that in mind, who's spending at least a third of their income on their housing costs. And if you look at the homeowners, in Port Aransas, 46% of the homeowners are spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs, compared to 27% statewide. And similarly for renter households, the Port Aransas percentage is 55% of renter households spending more than 30% for their housing costs, compared to 48% for the state. And then lastly, looking at the different housing types and some other statistics that you have here today, whenever you look at how many of our housing units are traditional detached single-family homes. So of all the housing units, 55% of the units here are single-family. That's compared to 65% statewide, so it's a little bit lower. And then whenever we look at how many of the units are in buildings with at least 50 or more units, it's a little higher. So you have 19% here compared to 5% statewide. So there's a lot in this higher density 50 plus, but all the middle part is a little bit lower too. So your
density skews a little bit higher compared to the state, which is expected with the tourism. Also, the average household size is a little bit lower here, 2.12 compared to 2.77 statewide. That's also consistent with having an older household age, so there's maybe not as many kids at home, so the household size is a little smaller. And also categorizing what they call a vacant housing unit, which, you know, it's probably not actually vacant if someone has been coming back over time. Here it says that 56% vacant because snapshot of housing and demographics.
So you can see by the data that Port Aransas is compared to the rest of the state. Some of the issues, a few of you that were here that saw the discussion with Ken Paxton, the ability to serve such a high population in the summertime affects the budget, affects your fiscal situation. So it's important that we try to begin to think about all these dynamics as we create this plan for what we want our community to look at. So what we want, where are we on time? Okay, so good. So here's what we want to do to spend the rest of the time is to engage in some discussion here. And Erica's going to take some notes, but we've called it a soar, like soaring, not a wooden soar. It used to be called, back in the day, some of you might be, it used to be called SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But now they call it SOAR because it's more aspirational. So anyway, so the strength, the S part of it is what we want to do is first we're going to try to talk, we're going to go through this. Erica will take the notes, but we want you to talk a little bit about what you think the strengths are here and what we're most proud of. What are the things that we think are strong? We touched on a little bit of them. I heard a lot of them being discussed with the Attorney General. But what are we thinking is makes us great? And then the opportunities, what could we do to be even better? There's always room for improvement. There's room for improvement in our personal lives. There's room for improvement for cities. And so that's really important. And then our aspirations. We think that this plan ought to be somewhat a blend of protecting the past. You have a great history here that needs to be protected. But also it needs to be aspirational. When we look down the road in 10 years or 20 years, what are we thinking that we want to be like? And it's amazing if we, we'll get into discussion if we decide to do all these things, there's all kinds of reasons why we can't do them. We might not be able to fund them or afford them, but that's not the way history is proved to be. There's a lot of things that have been done in America and we couldn't afford to do them, but we figured out a way to do them. And so if you want to make sure nothing ever happens, we don't ever have to do anything. But if we want to try to put them in a plan and work towards them, then they have a chance for coming to fruition, and that's really good. So what we want to look like in 10 years or 20 years, we want to have a discussion about that. And then what does success look like for us? So when we get there, these are the things we want to do. But when we get there, what does success look like for Port Aransas? What does it look like for us? You tell us what you think success looks like here. And that'll give us a clue on what we need to do. So those are the 4 things that we want to start off with. So we're going to start off with the strengths. So we'll leave this slide up here, and Erica's going to take notes.
I have a hard slide, if anyone would like a hard copy. Yeah, so those are the screen tools.
Hold it up on it. Okay. Didn't get it. All right. All right, all right, so let's start off and let's talk about, you tell us what do you think and we'll focus on the committee here. But others can participate, but I'd like to get the committee's thoughts first, and then if we have time, let's talk to others. But tell us what you think the strengths are, so we can document, we want to document the great things that we are as a community. What do you think they are?
The sense of community,
Sense of community,
nonprofits,
nonprofits in
important. I mean, there's lots of
nonprofit organizations. Okay,
Whether it's, scholarships or, natural resources. I think
Fishing community.
a fishing community. So we have fishing. Do we have sailboats here or not sailboats? No sailboats? Okay, no sailboats.
We
No
have,
There's some. But we're really thinking that we're,
being able to drive on our beach. It is unique.
I tell you what,
Other places-
we did that yesterday. We came in yesterday and, Erica hadn't been down here. She's hadn't been here. I said, you gotta go to the beach. And this is one of the few places on the Texas coast that you can drive on the beach.
That's right, it's
It's
accessible.
actually unique.
Did you do it in the boat? Yeah.
There's lots of beaches, lots of them that you can actually drive, your family, your stuff, set up your day, and then load your stuff up and go home.
And,
That's just,
Erica said, who maintains these beaches? They're beautiful. We'll see. We're not working with Galveston right now, but you go to Galveston and their beach has got stuff on the beach. But you drive on this beach and it's nice, it's graded. I guess you graded, it looks like you graded.
a lot of effort to maintain it.
And so it's evident. So your beach access, I think, is one of your strengths. What else?
Great school.
Schools.
Yeah, they're great. They really are.
And you didn't have to say it.
Right, but I'll say too, and I tell people all the time this, is that we also have incredible community support for our schools. Meaning people come together and say, this is important, and like talking about nonprofits, scholarships and such too, but anytime we have a kid with a need, people, sometimes before I ask, are swooping in to make sure. So I think it's evident of how this community really takes care of each other. And I'll say too, even more than that, is that I always kind of joke, once the tourists leave, the schools really are the heart of the community. People come out.
They're here.
I mean, I'm just like this because we're going to a playoff game next. There'll be tons of people there that don't have kids at school, that just show up to support our kids.
That's not anecdotal, that's state recognized greatness
Yes.
too. So I mean, we think it's great, but that's state distinction that's there.
You look at the great things that, if you look at the top 10 things that people rate the great communities by, schools is one of them, open space, recreation is another, but it's important there.
Talk about open space. We have this amazing Charlie Patch. 800 acres of land,
Nature preserve.
natural and native.
A third of the island is a state park. So.
Yeah.
You mentioned Galveston and, we're a more authentic beach town, I think, than a big city like Galveston or even South Padre. Which is part of our attraction, which makes it a challenge to remain an authentic beach town.
Well, to me, it's a lot more than Galveston. Galveston has the part that's in the city there, but as farther you go west, that's a lot of private. I mean, they're right up on it. You don't have the public access that you have here.
I say the fact that anybody can come to our beaches is a huge access. I always call it the working man's beach, because if you can't rent a $2,500 a night house, you can take your tent and stay on the beach. So everybody can come here, not just the.
Well, what everybody calls Texas's beach. That's what everybody
So-
says.
so you-
Texas's
But
beach.
you can get a permit, right? You get a permit and you can bring your RV and park there or your tent and,
3 nights.
3 nights.
Every 2 weeks. Or 3 weeks, sorry. Until they get caught.
Well, there's a lot of people there. Yes.
Somewhere to, even if they can't afford a house at $2,500. And a lot of people think we need to raise the price of our beach permits so that only the right people come, and I think it has always been and should continue to be. Fishermen. You know, you make it so your fishermen can't afford to be there anymore, you're not a fishing community anymore. We don't have a pier, how are we a fishing community?
Strengths.
Strengths. But
It's our
hold
strength,
that
but
thought.
it's still
Hold-
our weakness.
You're
Here's
getting-
them coming.
You're
They're coming.
about a half a step ahead. Just hang on. All right, so what are our other strengths? Strength. We want. You have a lot of choices on tourism, right? That's one of my ideas. I mean, when you come here, now we are staying in a short-term rental. And it's great. It is great. It's one of the nicest ones we've ever.
And y'all being quiet, picking up your trash.
We are model renters, or model stayers. But I can see where it could get out of hand during spring break and other
Any
times.
weekend, it doesn't have to be spring break, we don't have an off-season anymore.
So that might be a strength, but that also might be a problem. But you do have a lot of choices, and you can get a hotel, regular Hampton or Best Western, or you can get a short-term rental, or you can get a condo that you have high-rise things. And so to me, that's why people spend vacations here. You have choices on how to spend your weekend if you want to rent something on the beach or RVs. We look out over we're staying on a short-term rental on Robert Street, and we look over an RV, and you can tell those folks are there, and it's packed. There's not a vacant space in it. I don't know if that changes, but I was just watching it, and there ain't none of them leaving. So they were just all there.
Not till the end of February,
nice
they
marina.
start pulling out March.
Is that right?
We'll start pulling out the first of March. Before spring breakers come, Texans start pulling out.
Good, nice marina.
Marina, that nice marina.
I'm hungry.
Okay,
I'm
so-
hungry.
so we've been eating at all the great
Yeah.
places,
So good.
and you do have a lot of restaurants that seem to come back. Pandemic, and a lot of places have it.
Restaurants and retail.
Well, we have
Yeah.
so many people.
Well, let's try to stay away from that one, but thank you, Greg.
Not too bad.
Thank you.
People
Well,
from
that's true.
Corpus Christi come over here to eat dinner.
Henshaw?
When I first came here, they closed everything down in the winter. There was nothing open. Miss Pete's and what was that, Island Cafe, and that was it. And it was just amazing. Nothing to do. You couldn't go anywhere. And then somebody attracted the winter Texans, and it made all the difference, because then they stayed open.
Well, we went out to eat last night, and, I mean, it's just amazing on a Monday night, how much activities are, all the places seem to have people, even this time of year, so that's a real strength.
Another strength, especially when you consider a community that's been hit by a Category 4 hurricane and a tourist community that was impacted by COVID, we have a very resilient, strong economy, local economy.
Yeah, you can look that there's a lot of homes that survived, and there's a lot of new homes, so it is resilient. What I want to ask you, do you think now, I live on a ranch, so I have a golf cart, so I love it. Now, I just wanted to ask you all, do you all think that the golf carts?
I thought we were still in spring.
Well, that's
Wait, why did you go right to politics?
But anyway, But anyway, do you think the golf cart, oh my gosh, I hadn't worked here in a long time, but, I can't believe the proliferation of golf carts. I mean, everywhere. Do you think, and I'm just wanting your opinion, we don't have to solve everything tonight, but I want to get this through this. Do you think the golf cart, availability is a strength, or do you think it's something that we need to not
Depends on
do?
if you want one or not.
Yeah, but- Well, I'm just saying, what do you all think? You all live here, what do you? What do you
Needs to
think?
be
Something that makes
controlled,
Port
yeah.
Aransas unique.
Yeah.
So easy.
So go, so.
But he's only been here a year, so. I don't
It needs to
think
be
you're
controlled.
extremely.
But they have to have license plates, right?
And they have to have rules, which they do not.
Well, the state law now says they can do it, you just can't do them on the state highways, but.
For visitors, they're an amenity. For locals, they're a challenge.
I see.
A real challenge.
Okay, well, we wanna get that on the next.
And we've hit resilient, strong local economy, and I absolutely agree, but also people too, like the people that live here. And I think that was very evident after the storm, that people got after it and worked to recover and make things better, so, I mean, I think that's pretty special too, just.
We're very fortunate, so many people have been coming here as they were growing up. See, just then, so probably a lot of them have been here, and then the hurricane came, and so many people. All of us came out here. And if you could look just, 30 or 40 miles around, you would see it. Those are
Let me ask you another question. Do you think the ferry is?
It makes it unique that it has big companies.
You can see dolphins though, that's.
People love crossing the ferry.
When they let you get out of your vehicle.
Well, they used to,
I
They used
know.
to let us get up.
but I was on it a while back, and there was a guy, and you could tell he had a family. He probably never been on a boat before in his life. He was telling his kids about the radar thing spinning up there. Kids, it was like, 3.5 minute ride across there, and it was part of the event. It was part of the experience of coming here, and so we could call. At one time, they talked about making a bridge, and it was.
Just take up too much land on this side.
Yeah.
The ships could go through. It'd have to end at the beach.
Yeah, I remember that discussion.
I get a bridge. Unlimited vertical clearance. This is what we've got before all the rigs at Kiewit and all that.
Yeah, it'd have to be so high.
We used to have military bases that used to go.
And they did some cost benefit. It's almost cheaper to keep them running. It costs a lot of money to run them ferries, but it's almost cheaper than building a bridge.
TechStop would love to be out of the ferry business.
I bet they would. There ain't many of them left. Okay, so we can come back and add to this, by the way, but to keep moving on, I want to get through all 4 areas. So, okay. All right, so let's go to opportunities, and maybe we can, what could be better? What could we improve, or what are our opportunities?
Well, there were several. She mentioned one, there's statistics, and that 55% of the residents here are cost challenged on housing. Is that right? So we've got a workforce problem. They can't live here. One of the reasons those RVs that you see are full, there are a lot of employees who live in those.
I hadn't thought about that, but that's not.
I know families that have never lived in a
School
house,
employees.
ever, they raise their kids in an RV. They work 2 and 3 jobs. Their kids work. That's
Yeah, I wonder if the like waitresses and a lot of service employees, where do they live?
on the other side.
Or this or across the
Oh, do
street.
they drive
And
in?
even half my school district staff don't live in Puerto Rico.
Is that right?
All the
Did everybody hear
neighborhoods.
that? Half of her staff doesn't live here.
Part of
of our kids don't live here.
Hey,
Most kids in
Almost
high school.
23% of my kids don't live here. They transfer and they come in every day.
We're forcing kids in to keep the school open.
They have to fight with it. I mean, it's pretty obvious from the demographics.
Yeah.
We're 54 is the average, and
But the people want to be here.
we need families, you know, that are 30.
Can't afford it, but
Have a
everybody I
family.
know. that-
And I know when we had the housing committee for a few years, we called it attainable housing.
families here in
We
20
just
years.
want whatever your demographic is to be able to have an option to live
To
here.
raise their kids
You
somewhere
know,
else.
like teachers, for example.
Yeah, the old term was affordable housing, but really what the cities we work in want workforce housing. They want attainable, is the word, attainable workforce housing that people can afford. And so they have this term that you all, I know that talked about here, is called ADUs. These accessory dwelling units is the short, it's ADUs. But anyway, in the old days, we used to call them granny houses. No offense to any grandmothers here, but you'd have a place above a garage, and that was an extra room that somebody could stay in.
Well, we
And
took
so,
advantage of it and started using them for short-term rental
Yeah,
instead
now
of
they're
long-term
And so
rental.
now-
okay,
and
so
it's
so
fine.
now let's talk about that. So these, and somebody mentioned it when Paxton was here, but Austin has been killed by housing costs. And I'm not saying you're like, but what they've done is they've worked real hard to deal with, ADUs. And so, what do you all think about the housing problem? And I guess that bleeds over into short-term rentals a little bit. And so all that is going back and forth. I know y'all have some thoughts about it.
We do the devil's advocate, who wants their property value to go down so that they can build cheap houses, is a double-edged sword.
Well, we just changed that.
Yeah, we did.
I know you just worked on it, and just worked on an ordinance, got that done. But that, I hope that's the fix.
Well, it won't be the fix for getting housing here, it'll just.
But
stop
that
them from
doesn't-
renting them.
There's not a whole lot of ADUs here on the island
Okay.
anyway. There's really not a lot of properties that we have that situation in to begin with, so.
All these houses that were built on stilts a long time ago, they all got
Kind of
covered up to become garages.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they became a garage and all of a sudden inside, it became somebody else's.
And start their commercial.
So really, the ADU issue here is a non-issue. Okay. We just need to know.
Well, it's not a silver bullet in solving workforce housing.
Okay.
It has not been, no. Crash and burn, because the short-term rental industry decided, hey, we can build smaller places. More rental and less area. The other problem is getting developments to commit to only short or long-term. But they're only committed for a short period of time, and as soon as that time is up, bam, why should they take, $1,200 a month and then get $2,400 a night? And there's been so much rental taken out of the market, especially since Harvey, when a lot of the little older places that were long-term rental are gone. We have lost more children since Harvey because families have no place to stay. There's no rental for them, and what property owner are you gonna tell, hey, you gotta build long-term rental?
Earlier, you said that schools were our strength, but I think
It's also our
Sharon
weakness.
could tell us that the enrollments are going down, we're in danger, I guess.
Well, we're in better shape because we have so many out-of-district transfers that come here. So we're at about 23% of out-of-district transfers. Enrollment is higher than Harvey, so I can't say that, even before Harvey, this was an issue with enrollment because of housing costs. Of course, now it's been, a million times worse since Harvey for all the reasons that everybody is talking about right now. So our preference would be, that we had families here that we could sustain, a school district the way that we're all used to having it, right? We could have lower enrollment, but we would have to change how we do things. quite a bit. And I think that would take away from the strengths of our schools. And so it's an enrollment issue for students, but then it's a definite hiring issue. And we have, our teachers, our staff want to be here and usually stay here till they retire. So if you look at my demographics compared to staff across the state, might have many more years of experience overall, which is awesome. But it also means I'm about to lose a bunch of teachers to retirement, and now there's no place for them to live. And then go back to the ferry issue. You know, right now, my people that work across the ferry sometimes wait over an hour. So I'm saying, come to Port Aransas where you're gonna make less, and then have an hour and a half or 2 hour commute to go home. So that
So-
is an issue.
So you said you're declining enrollment now. What do you see long-term though, on your enrollment? You see it leveling out or
Our
continue to go
enrollment is
down?
very steady right now. It had been declining even before Harvey, and then of course when Harvey came, we took a huge dip because people couldn't live here, you know. It took a year for people to get back in their homes. And then some never came back, others have come in. So it's like our district enrollment this morning was 526. We would love to be around 550, you know, if we could kind of make that work. If they're spread out, like I don't need, 24 more third graders, but it's spread out a little bit. That would be our sweet spot.
Of the
Probably
526, how many of your students don't live?
23%, so whatever the amount is. Yeah.
So we're educating students from Flower Bluff, I don't know about.
About half and it's about
They don't live here.
It's about half and half, y'all, coming from down the Island Road, and some are teachers' kids, so they live in Corpus or whatever, and their kids come to school here too. And then about the other half of those out of district transfers come across the ferry, and again, several of them are teachers' kids, so they live across the ferry and bring their kids to school here. So, the commute, especially when you add the bridge work and Corpus going on, the commute is a challenge. And just another thing that becomes a challenge for us is like baseball, softball season right now and all these other things. Like you're trying to get schools and buses to come over and play our baseball teams. And this even goes with our youth sports like Little League and Big Youth Basketball. They don't want to come to Port Aransas to play because their little 20-minute drive across the ferry could be an hour or 2 hours on a Saturday. So who wants to spend hours and hours in the car to go play a 45-minute youth basketball game? So we wind up traveling just so we can get more games, right? So we go across the ferry so we can get more games for our kids. So it really is a challenge, both directions, enrollment, staffing, and then just our activities.
One of the opportunities may be, Sharon, how does this sound? One of the opportunities may be this whole affordable housing. Obviously, given the demand and the lack of inventory here shows that there's plenty of affordable housing to that sector. I think the opportunity is, instead of that rental investor, the opportunity is to put a family into that house. People are buying the houses. They're buying it. They're clearly they are. So I think maybe one of the opportunities is to get that family in instead of the rental investment.
Yeah, there needs to be some incentives because as it is right now, you're making a ton more money doing a short-term rental than you are long-term. There needs to be some kind of an incentive that would encourage somebody to,
But they make good money selling the house, right? It's just the
new people coming in.
they have to pay taxes, the
Yes,
insurance.
the beginner.
Our taxes and insurance are more than our house payment at
Our
this
starting
point.
teacher can't leave the town and buy one of those houses. Hiring teacher and sell it.
And Sharon,
The prices.
you recently had a few families with children relocate here. So one thing, since
COVID helped us in that
remote
regard.
work and the flexibility
Right.
to decentralize work,
Yes.
that's a message and opportunity is to try to attract more. We've talked about the demographics of younger families with kids to move here, relocate here and take advantage of our great schools and the
Yeah.
beaches and the
And that
fishing.
happened after COVID. We had families from Austin and San Antonio come here because our schools were wide open and they could, right? They could work remotely. And they liked the idea of their kids being in school here, so it kind of was an impetus to make it work. So yes, we had several families that have just moved here. Austin, San Antonio probably being the two biggest markets, I would say.
Demographic that I would like to see explored is, and maybe it's already readily accessible, but of the Port Aransas population, what percentage of Port Aransas residents work here? What percentage travel somewhere else for work, like Corpus? And what percentage are retired or in Port Aransas? I mean, there's only 3,000 or 4,000 people, so it shouldn't be that hard to get that demographic, but it seems like it would inform some decisions about the needs of the people here. I think you're fine. Most people who are working work here, if at all possible. Don't travel to Corpus to work.
And the process will include a lot of surveys, if I remember our pre-planning correct. And
Yes.
we can capture that,
We're gonna,
something.
Erica's really good about, creating surveys that we're able to do them online and, mail them in or however we think is the best will work here. And hopefully we'll get a lot of good information. We'll ask, threatening questions like, hey, do you work in, not where do you work, but do you work in Port Aransas, things like that.
We had a slide that kind of touched on that, where it said we have 4,000 residents and 3,500 jobs.
I think so.
That's easy to figure out.
For those jobs, maybe seasonal and
Tourism
hospitality. type work.
brings 3,400
Right.
jobs and $7.7 million.
So there are some more jobs that are not.
Right.
I think it probably is seasonal,
Wouldn't
but
have much help if they didn't have.
What's the breakdown for how much tourism is actually cost? How much does it cost us in extra police? How much wear and tear on our few EMS we have? I mean, there has to be some kind of balance, because if my husband has a heart attack and all the ambulance are taking guys from the beach that drank too much in the sun. And I listen to the radio, the scanners, and we can have all the ambulances out over freaking ODs.
You have these, heavy, yours is a little longer. We did a plan years back for Canton, Texas. Okay, if you know where Canton is, it's east of Dallas. But they have a thing called First Monday. And the first Monday of every month, they have this huge festival. I mean, you can buy anything you want there. I mean, you can buy chimpanzee monkeys, and you can buy anything you can think of. It's like the biggest garage sale flea market ever. If you've ever been in. But they get 250,000 people coming in on a weekend, and that town is about 3,500. And so they have a huge traffic problem. How do you build infrastructure? How do you have a police department, EMS for these big events? Now, your event lasts all summer, but it's the same, it's a real problem. It's a real problem.
And it's a problem that the state isn't addressing, because hot tax money can only be used to bring in more tourists.
Well,
Can't be used to fix the issues we're having, that to support the tourists once they're here.
I'm not a citizen of Port Aransas, but I am a citizen of the state, and I was gonna ask the Attorney General, I said, the state's done a really good job of controlling property taxes and how much cities can charge, okay? They put a ceiling on it, 3.5% or whatever. And they like to get rid of it, okay? Okay, just think about this, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, just think about this just for a second. I'm gonna ask you about it. But what they haven't done is all the costs are still rising for cities. Unintended consequences. So they capped all the costs. The state does not build infrastructure. They do build highways, they do have tech stop. But most infrastructure in Texas, fire, police, roads, water, sewer, all built by cities. State didn't build those.
Well, that's just it. They're tired hands with that.
Well, and so what they've done is they said, okay, we're, protecting the property rights and we're not raising taxes, but the problem is all the costs associated with everything else are rising, and those are not capped. So we have huge inflation now. We have all these things that are rising, and everything's still capped down here. So I think it's just whatever side of politics you're on, it's still an issue of how cities like Port Aransas can pay for these things, and we can only raise taxes so much. I've always argued that if the citizens don't like it, they can come to the city council and say, you're out. I mean, they have a, if they don't like your tax situation here, the citizens have a way to get rid of it. But it is, I think it's important that we in this plan try to figure out what an aspirational balance is, what we want to do here, because, I mean, there's not gonna be, it's just not endless money.
Two thoughts. It's us against them, which is the people who live here against people coming here, or the people making a living off them, as opposed to the people that are just put out by them and not making money off them.
I think it
So always
sums it
comes
up.
down to, us against them, and nothing gets fixed.
Well, I'd like to talk about something else.
All right, well, but,
Besides people.
okay.
Give
But-
it an opportunity or not?
But we're starting to get to the meat of all the issues here is what I'm.
Well, I don't think so. We have flooding all the time, polluted water going into our bays. Nobody's talking about that. And every time it rains, the whole city floods, so our drainage is just a mess.
Well, that's part of the infrastructure.
We
that wasn't
need
planned
to
for
work
the
on
building.
those kinds of issues.
State says you can't fix all that because you can only charge this much.
Well, no, whatever, we're gonna do maybe a stormwater impact fee that's gonna bring us in money.
And
so
we're doing part of that for you, and we're gonna look at that.
That goes along with what I was gonna suggest, is that I think we should explore all of the possible user type fees that we could implement as a city because of this influx of tourism.
Why not?
Yeah,
Leave
it's a
some water
burden on
here,
the
right?
people,
Well,
right, making
so-
a burden.
From their standpoint, you're putting a tax on somebody that doesn't live here. That's, if I was on the council, that'd be a pretty good idea.
No, because you gotta pass it to the
Car
business.
tax, that's it.
I mean, there's so many different activities that you could look
Never
to
even
for
thought
that kind of thing, without putting it on.
Right, impact fees or whatever's, if you're a home builder or a developer, they don't like to pay impact fees, but impact fees are popular because you're charging, it's a tax, but you're charging a tax on somebody that doesn't live here.
The end user pays it.
The end user pays it, but it's people that aren't here yet. They're moving in. You don't put that, you're not allowed to put that tax on existing residents. So the existing residents are here, but anybody comes in, pays this, and so I hate to, I'm just telling you that you are all on the right track with, that you're astute enough that we got to figure out how to deal with this because it's going to be us against them, whoever us is and them is. And that's not going to be good for the community. It's going to be divisive. It's,
One of the things they said about, the good thing is community, that's great, and I agree, because if you see somebody in this community, like a homeless guy, a couple years ago got rolled by some tourists and they sold his backpack. The people in the community not only came in and replaced his backpack, put him up in a hotel, they bought him a travel trailer to live in for the remainder of his life. They came together and took care of one of their own. That, nothing to do with the city, that is the people here, that when they realize one of their own is in trouble, step up to fix it, or help. They do that here.
Well,
There's no doubt about it. The
If they-
problem is, where's the rest of community? Like I said, it's us against them. And when we have asked for stuff in the past, for stuff in the off season, when I specifically have asked in the past, if we could do something to thank the people who live here for all the inconvenience during a particularly horrible summer, we got a big fat, oh, we can't do that. We can't do anything that's not. Excludes the tourists. And it wasn't excluding them, it was just in the off season when they weren't here. If they were here, they were welcome. There really is no thank you for putting up the crap.
To
Really don't make a living.
Joan's point about stormwater, it's my understanding, the city of Corpus Christi has been charging stormwater drainage costs in their water rates. And what they've just done recently is they've separated those. And water rates are going down for citizens of Corpus Christi. However, they're gonna have a stormwater charge. If you have impervious soil in your yard, you're gonna be charged, you're gonna be billed for that.
I think and if you think about it, that's what the state's telling cities. Forget about Port Aransas for this just a second. Is they're pushing property tax down, and what they really are saying is the private sector needs to pick up its share. And we just finished we're in the process of, well, it's finished, we just, it's going to adoption, Portland comp plan. And, it's about done, and they're doing impact, they're gonna fix it to do impact fees. Cause I mean, they got a lot of flooding too, and they just can't, I mean, like all cities, just can't afford it. And so how are we gonna deal with flooding and all these other issues, and we can't raise,
Impact
raise
fees have been in
taxes.
place for 12 or 13 years here, and obviously hasn't impeded growth.
there you go. And so I think I think the term it's user fees. And user fees, I think, is something we've got to at least advance as a idea and a solution, possible solution to pay for, everything costs money, and we gotta pay for stuff. And it's just,
What we've been doing, Dad, I think it was your dad, was in on the beach parking permits. And that's how that started. We could charge, the beach goers for going to the beach, and we could only use that money for, frankly, Rick, you know this better than I do. You know, lifeguards, cleaning the beach, you know, whatever, all those costs.
And that was it, of course, the beach is under the authority and in a lot of aspects, under the GLO, so they've got to agree to that, and you're right. That money can't become a windfall profit, it's gotta be used for a specific purpose. 15-minute warning.
okay, I've been told by my clock watcher here, we got 15 minutes before the P and Z meeting starts. So, all right, so we gotta go through aspirations and results. We can kind of, let's just lump those together a little bit. We'll separate them out later. But where are we gonna be in 10 years? Where are we gonna be in 10 years?
I'll be dead.
Maybe not. It's not for you to decide. I'll tell you that. But where are we gonna be in 10, where do we, what's the success look like on this plan? What do we want to get out of this plan? City spending money on it. We ought to have a plan that we want to go and do. What does success look like?
Better quality of life, I think, for
Okay.
people that live here.
Okay.
More families.
Environment, we want to keep our fish and birds, and, you know, we want to protect our-
Environmental
Yeah.
sensitivity
Healthy marsh and.
and not flood.
and not flood.
Well, and clean, the water cleaned up, it all runs into the bay right now, so we need to clean it up.
We can look at
kill fish.
a couple of extremes in Texas coastal communities. There's South Padre, which is totally overdeveloped. It's not even a real town, almost no one actually lives there. And on the other hand, we have Galveston that is highly polluted, and people who live in Galveston come to Port Aransas for that very
Get away from
reason.
Yeah.
Yes, and so
Exactly.
we're in this unique position now of, we can see where other places have gone, and we can avoid that, and we should, and develop the things that are unique and to Port Aransas, which the natural environment should be right up there, number one. If you don't preserve that, it's over, you know, and all the
We're
other
gonna, we're
things,
gonna look like
tourism,
Dustin
fishing,
or
Community.
And that's, I don't think anybody wants that. I don't even think the developers want us to look like Destin, Florida. I don't think anybody does. But that's what's gonna happen.
where it's headed.
Yeah.
All right, so that's what environmentally, sensitivity, whatever, we'll define all this later. But that's important. What else will be a success for
Younger demographic.
Yeah.
more younger folks living here?
Families and younger.
Because I was gonna take that to support the school, to support nonprofits, to support everything that happens on the island. That's workforce,
More diverse
yeah.
population.
What keeps you from being a Destin that's a hollow community that's
Yeah.
only occupied on the weekends?
It's sad, and it wasn't like that years ago.
Yeah, but we're heading that.
What else looks like it? I'm trying to rush through here because I want to try to get this. What else is success?
Getting to the grocery store without having to make all right.
Right, Charles. Carol, over here.
I don't know if we're gonna fix that one.
I don't know if I get that.
enjoyed our Twin Beach so much is because Port Aransas has a heck of a beach volunteer pickup. In every community we have W Pairheads, Women's Auxiliary, Port Aransas is beautiful. Everybody does beach cleanup.
But it's traffic.
Traffic.
And the traffic is so long that you can't get through it. So you
You
can't.
got, you're on an island and it's a long skinny island. And guess what you got? A long skinny road.
And I'll say with that too, though, is, you know, you have to go to Corpus for something, you know, you need to be able to go and come back. or
Well, you can get out the
there's a
other end
ferry
and
come
get
back.
up
No,
there.
you can't. Oh, my Lord, it's horrible. When they put in that second light before the bridge, so now there's two
Really?
lights to get through.
And
It can
I mean,
take
it can be
3 hours
hours
to
to
get
come
down
back
the highway.
from
and
the
that's-
traffic during the busy
So it's as
time.
long that way as it
Yes,
is
it
from
is.
Fair.
Some kind, no, it's not. Some kind of spring break. One of the big days.
It'll be open.
There's
A lot of
seasons.
weekends are like that.
No,
But
we're
y'all,
not
even
gonna
before the
do
bridge
that.
construction, I mean, there were plenty of times we'd be coming back from games or whatever, and it's, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of traffic.
There are
So,
also
like,
problems within the city that limit the flow of traffic, like the fact that you can't turn right from the cutoff road onto Allister or 361. There's no right turn lane. So that's where the ferry traffic comes, and it just backs up because half of those people are probably going straight, half of them probably want to turn right, but they're all gonna
No, I
be in
saw them
that
turn
line.
right this morning. They come off the ferry and they turn right here, right here. They
No,
come
no,
down right here.
I mean, go down
The traffic
around the
light
cutoff
will
road
And it goes back to Alice. Yeah.
to Allister, you can't turn right there.
You
I mean,
can't
there,
turn right?
well, there's not a right turn lane. So all of the traffic.
There's no turn lane.
goes straight right, stops right
We can
there.
put that in the plan. We can fix that.
Well, I mean, it looks a little complicated because it has a highly developed corner, but where there's a will, there's a way. You know,
Absolutely.
Fix that. You know.
Absolutely.
And that is a huge source of congestion in the
It
whole
is.
city. The whole thing.
Yeah, and I think. when
Street maintenance.
Drainage systems get fixed, and I'm reminded that like these years, if you build a high quality road like you do in the West, we have 50-year roads. When I moved down there, first time, 13, and then we built the South 11. Look at it now.
But we're on sand.
We
The
need
biggest problem is our
sidewalks.
storm
We really
drains
need
fill
All
our
right.
sand.
Sidewalks.
I was waiting for that one. to
We
come
need
up.
better mobility
Okay,
throughout
so-
town besides cars.
Yeah, but
We
they
can-
can't fit a golf.
I got up
cart.
this morning and I saw couples and they're all walking in the street. They're all walking in the street, because you don't have any, you got few sidewalks. Now, you do have some improvement to the beach. You have a wide, I don't know whether you can drive golf carts on or not, but you got some wide sidewalks that go down there. But I tell you what, we've worked in cities that, you mentioned sidewalks, they were looking for a road. I mean, you know, or they all want sidewalks because everybody uses them. So what do y'all think about sidewalks? Yes or no?
They
Just-
can't be big enough for golf carts.
It should be.
We have a
There
lot
can be
more than we
barriers
used to.
put up on blocks that would actually
They
stop
would
them from
have
driving
to,
through.
Because I've seen pickup trucks driving down the sidewalk on the highway.
Well,
So big.
The idea of the sidewalk would be for people
Well,
and
of course, that's. the
not
idea.
vehicles. Okay.
We should try to develop pedestrian areas where people are encouraged to park in a parking lot somewhere and then walk throughout the large area, like the entire flats and the center of town. You
And I
know.
think that's a worthy idea. You're small enough and compact enough to have that closeness to where that idea might work. Before we get away, I want to ask you about this idea, whether we should even pursue it or not, but start with a town center or an old town.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
is it a good idea? Is it-
Yes.
We don't, we,
Yes.
I want to know what your picture, now, I agree, we got to figure out where it is, what it looks like, and who's in it, and what's in it. but-
There's
but-
property already sort of, yeah.
Okay, we can get that, but should we have an area that, I know you have some signs up that says Old Town, but I don't really look at that right now. Do you think we ought to have an area that's identified as Old Town or center, and then it has special, maybe a special zoning district? I know you have a kind of a central district. Okay. So that's a good idea. Everybody likes that idea. Walkable center, and we'll call it whatever we decide to call it, but for right now, it could be Old Town or downtown or whatever? Old Town, Old Town. Okay. So yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I just don't know what we can do about the lower traffic counts worse this year.
Well, we do have a traffic component that's a big effort. We're gonna ask some opinions about that tomorrow night. And then, I think on Thursday, we'll have Eddie Haas, our transportation planner, will be here too. He'll
I'm
have
thinking
some
it's
ideas.
about March. Can get to grocery
With
store.
May through August.
I guess.
Everyone has to stay in their house.
I'm
The
saying COVID
proliferation
made
of
it
golf
worse.
carts has also contributed to that significantly.
Yeah, we can
Within
do
Puerto Rico,
anything about
not
golf
only do
carts.
you have all of these people coming in their individual cars, to visit here, and their RVs and everything else, but then you multiply that because a whole bunch of them also rent the golf cart once they're here.
Well-
They're driving the golf carts, not driving their RV through town.
Yeah, but they seem to utilize both of them quite a bit, and I mean,
Before
it's
we
just so-
lived where we do now, we lived in Sun City and Georgetown. And golf carts were a big deal there. But I looked at it, and the reason it worked there is because the streets were so wide. And they could, people could go around and
Yeah, you
everything.
get behind them. you're
But
just stuck.
here, there's two things going on. First of all, your streets aren't very wide. And I don't want to cast any aspersion on visitors, but if you own a golf cart, you're going to be able to generally use it in a way that's better than somebody that's never driven one before. And a lot of these visitors, unless they're golfers, of course, but, a lot of these visitors don't drive them regularly,
They treat them like toys. They let their 6-year-olds drive them.
which is illegal, but.
And there's not enough officers to enforce it.
Let their 14-year-old drive a golf cart.
There just needs to be a limitation on how many golf cart permits. I mean, let a
And
permit.
there's not a
for
limit
every-
down, there's not a limit down.
No, what business are you gonna tell them?
Maybe we're there.
How are you gonna pick and choose which business is allowed to grow theirs and which has
Without
to?
limit.
Give one to every single resident here and then times, I don't know, a certain number, but at some point, just stop issuing permits for more and more golf carts.
Again, there's the problem. What business are you? gonna
Okay,
tell
so
them they can't
here's the
grow?
thing, we let everybody do what they want to do, and then how does that help with our community? Somewhere online, somebody's got to pay the freight, and having unlimited permits, the consequence of that is what? So, do we limit them? But then the consequence of that's limited business. So, we gotta,
Telling a
I think we
private
gotta
owner they
address
can't bring
these
theirs,
things
they
in
have
the
to pay
plan.
$120 a day to rent one.
Right, and it doesn't have to be, and the nice thing about that is it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical thing that we put in the plan. It can be a strategy like that. We want this to be limited to achieve this. And those strategies can be in there. They don't have to be a physical thing we put on the ground like land use or whatever. But I think we're gonna have to talk about those things because 10 years, if we don't do anything, you know what it's gonna look like in 10 years?
Oh, yeah.
Just like it is today. And that might be good, that might be fine,
Except worse.
or worse. All right, so we got 5 minutes. Anything, I'm sorry we got pinched on time here, but we'll have more time on Thursday night. What else can you tell us about any of these before we break? Because P and Z's got to start here.
What about a fire department that's not based on volunteers? Aren't we gonna have enough more money, have enough?
I think you're probably ready.
About $1.5 million a year.
Cheapest thing
That's a
you'll do,
usage fee.
the cheapest thing you'll do, what he was talking about, the cheapest thing you do is build a fire station.
Right.
They require a lot of staff.
About $1.5 million. Side move.
Yeah, we probably.
Impose some user fees on somebody.
Fire, if you have a fire, you.
Well, in Dallas, they used to pay taxes and everything. If you go picked up by the EMS, you got a bill.
So do we.
Oh, yeah, you here.
Yeah, so in a way, that's a user fee.
Yeah.
All right, what else? I hate to cut it short, but we'll continue more on Thursday night. We'll see everybody here on Thursday, right? Thursday night at 6. All right. And any last words? And we'll. Wait, before I got 3 minutes. Real quick, I knew there was something. Thanks, Eric. All right, so now, you don't have to do this. This is an ad hoc committee, so we can do what we want to do. And the council's been very clear. We want this, you all to run yourselves, and you're the boss of me and Erica. But it'd be a good idea for you all to think about, we don't do it tonight, maybe Thursday night, to have a chair and vice chair. Because if we get into all these issues and y'all get to squabbling, then you're gonna look at me at refereeing all this, and I really shouldn't be the one refereeing. So it would be good to have a chairperson to help referee. So would you all think if you'd like to have a chairperson and a vice chair, and if you would, maybe elect that person, that lucky person,
And what would they do?
they're gonna chair the meeting and you know, we're a civilized society and they're gonna keep unrest to a minimum. Yeah,
People talking too much.
well, yes, and there's gonna be people on both sides of the issue. There always is when we do this. So who's gonna referee all that? Me?
Yeah.
All right.
That's it. You got one here.
There you go.
I
You don't live in your house.
Well, I tell you what, I can and I have. It's not the best way to do it. It's better if y'all can help with that. All right, so here's the last, on here is we're gonna talk about, you decided the meetings are okay for you all. We're gonna be here on, Thursday at 6. And so, we're kind of working around these other meetings, so we want the best attendance. So y'all think about that. That's all I got, but thank you all, and sorry we kind of rushed through it here, but thank you all. We'll see you Thursday. And see you tomorrow night too.
Tomorrow night, but not Thursday. I'm at the beginning of the year.
You'll be back to school.
Oh, really? Oh, no, that at 6 o'clock.
You gotta go to school. Take your place up here.
You will have, things, all of this stuff.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Could we do it? Is there any synergy? What time is this? What time is For the community event, I can get this. Yeah, and that station. We have
Oh, really?
Well, we're excited to see the.
We're still.
Amazing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Great job. The demographics that very good and very helpful. I made one.
Thursday night, yeah.
Yeah. We're there. Thank you all.